Welcome to the first truly current generation Call of Duty, and the first game to step completely away from the boots on the ground standard people had known for so long, and into an era of boost jumping. Advanced Warfare was the logical next step for the series, and though a lot of dissenting voices like to conveniently forget this today, there was a huge cry for what we had collectively dubbed Call of Duty Future Warfare. Everyone wanted to see it, so don't deny it. This was that first attempt, and it's also a great first attempt in many ways. Advanced Warfare makes a strong first impression, Kevin Spacey aside, both with its astonishingly beautiful CG cutscenes, its great art design, and the massively updated visuals. This game truly looked modern for the time, and still holds up today. The CG people, honestly, to me, look better than some of the stuff used in the highest budget movies of today. Star Wars and Tark, for example, that's got nothing on this. Not to mention, the performance is pretty darn solid. Some of the most solid in the series as far as I can tell. Much better than Ghost's maybe 30 to 60 frames a second for sure. There are a lot of little touches I really like as well, like the HUD being on your gun rather than on your screen. I'm a fan of this sort of utopian sci-fi look, so the aesthetics of many of the stages scratched that itch well. That being said, I don't absolutely love the motion blur implementation. I found it kinda distracting, despite not being one of those snobs that hates motion blur on principle. It just has to be done right, with the right types of motion blur, the right amount of samples, shutter speed, etc. At least sound design is extremely punchy and fantastic though. Facial animations in-game are also great too, though sometimes they come off as a bit overexpressive and therefore slightly goofy, but there's no denying it's still some strong animation. It's worth noting that I think it's kind of strange that your main character has a voice actor, but he rarely talks. At points it feels like a story meant for a silent protagonist, and at other times he's clearly expressing a lot of his own character. It's a bit inconsistent. Speaking of, I've seen some people argue that the death of your friend in the first mission is dumb because we barely knew him, so why should we care? That's my idiot voice. I don't really understand this because the reality is you're not supposed to care. Your character is the one who cares. It's meant as the catalyst that illustrates why he makes the choices he does, like by joining Atlas. The story is interesting overall because the villain is one of the more sane in the series, with big air quotes around sane. He's more calculating than a lot of the others, and has some points where he complains that politicians too often choose to put their citizens in harm's way by constantly starting frivolous wars. Obviously that's packaged inside a heap of evil, and it's also not exactly anything new for villains, but that combined with the fact that your best friend that dies early on was also his son really grounds him rather well. Kevin Spacey aside. So, mechanically, is Advanced Warfare as solid as it is in terms of presentation? Well, yeah, arguably even better, actually. Now, if you're expecting something that's not Call of Duty here, you've come to the wrong place. This is still very much a Call of Duty campaign, but that's fine as long as it's well designed. The biggest boon to this game in terms of design is all of the new tech-related stuff, which heavily gels with the core gameplay to add heaps of variety and player choice to the gunfights. Once again, I greatly value the small choices that add depth to the base gameplay, much more than I value the shiny set pieces and gimmicks. Advanced Warfare has shiny set pieces and gimmicks, but it also does a lot to spice up the basic gameplay. The most prevalent example of this is the exosuit boost jumping. The much maligned boots in the air gameplay of Advanced Warfare is actually one of its strongest elements. The boosting here is static rather than dynamic. You boost a set amount and therefore more or less a set distance whenever you use the ability. That being said, when compared to the later games, you also have more boosting options. Not only did they bring the slide back and make it supercharged by the exosuit, but you can double jump, air dash in multiple directions, and do a ground pound maneuver. This makes Advanced Warfare's core combat incredibly fast and frenetic. You are definitely a super soldier in this game, as are many of your enemies, and it feels great. A lot of people compared this to Titanfall, and since it came out a year after Titanfall, they ridiculously assumed that the entire direction of Advanced Warfare was able to change on a dime to ape Titanfall's core ideas and use them as their own. That's bullshit. There's no way this wasn't their plan, at least before Titanfall was announced, because the timeframes don't even begin to add up. And honestly, the super soldier jumpy shooty boom boom bang stuff is much stronger here than it is in Titanfall 1 if you ask me. That's not to say Titanfall 1 is bad, and Titanfall 2 is f***ing amazing. But the insane improvements in Titanfall 2 completely eclipse what the first title did, and make it feel like a beta test. However, Advanced Warfare still feels polished and focused by comparison to Titanfall 1. Advanced Warfare doesn't stop there, however. There are a lot of extra touches that help it along. These include other exosuit abilities, as well as an alternative exosuit known as the Specialist Exo. Combined, these two exosuits give the player a multitude of options depending on the mission, from a cloak to a grappling hook to a shield, etc. Beyond your suit, there are also some mission-specific things, like a shield you can find that follows you to keep you safe, but the top piece of glass on the shield can drop down to allow you to fire back toward your enemies. Your grenades also serve multiple purposes by offering several modes this time around. These grenades are particularly fun because they offer options like EMP blasts, target acquisition capabilities, basic frags or flashes, or homing grenades that target specific enemies. The guns are a mix of standard choices and some great sci-fi options that I found incredibly fun to experiment with, though thanks to the slide I still loved shotguns in particular. The core gameplay here is just fantastic, and while the game uses some set pieces that are similar to older titles, it often uses them in fresh ways. Take this ambulance pushing part, which is similar to the cart pushing section in Black Ops 1. Well, here it's more organic, largely because of the control you have over when you push forward and the much tougher enemy spawns. That being said, it still has some issues. Firstly, I really wish you could choose your exosuit for each mission. I much preferred the assault one, obviously, as illustrated above. Flinch is also still pretty bad, though this time you can use the skill tree to reduce it, similar to perks in Black Ops 2. Oh, that's another thing by the way. There are challenges to complete as you finish missions, and when you complete these challenges you unlock points to spend on skills in between levels. Most of the skills are nothing to write home about, but I like that you get the choice, and none of the skills feel pointless or obsolete. There's also a lot of QuickTime event / button prompt stuff, and they often show up in places they don't really need to. Probably the biggest shortcoming though is that despite the longer runtime at about 5.5 hours, the level and encounter design, as I said up top, is still very Call of Duty. That's not inherently a problem, but I can't help but to wish that these great mechanics were in a game that gave players a bit more freedom. Overall, I really enjoyed Advanced Warfare. It's not the best thing ever, but it's far more than playable. It's a genuinely good campaign, and one that you should check out if you just want a bit of boots in the air fun combined with traditional Call of Duty design.